I recognize that I contain multitudes, and at the moment of editing, the me then might be a little disgruntled or might want to be self-destructive. It's like, "Oh, fuck this other me in the future." So, it's just best if I operate as if future me is gonna make some really bad decisions, you know?
It's time for an adventure in the worlds of user experience and game design. On
Level 4
of the Design Thinking Games podcast, join old school UXers and aspiring game designers Michael Schofield, Tim Broadwater, and an array of quirky characters from pixelated heroes to mischievous NPCs in search of the ultimate player experience. Design thinking is a process that is applied to different types of games in this podcast. If you're wondering whether your favorite games have already come up, you can listen through the backlog at designthinkinggames.com. Now, Rapid Protobot, fire the design thinking laser.
We're here kind of recording what I think is going to be the last episode of our 4th season, the most complex and thematically consistent season, where we have been these two heroes venturing through the cosmos, really picking the brains of people who are or have or will soon be publishing actual physical games, crowdfunding it, marketing it, and getting it out into the wild. This is finally part of the game design Venn diagram that is actually starting to overlap with our 4v4 vampiric board game thirst.
I think this will be episode 54 will be the last episode of season 4. And that's crazy. I can't even believe that. We didn't even celebrate breaking 50. It just kind of happened, I guess.
I think the way we celebrated it was by it, like, in a way, it not being that big of a deal, right? We systematized the process so much that we were able to focus on making the content. So I think the way to celebrate it is like, oh my God, we hit 50 and it feels very possible we're going to hit a 60 and we'll hit a 70 and we'll probably hit an 80.
Thirst is a whole nother conversation. This year, unlike any previous year, we have taken Thirst to Unpub Prime Festival in Baltimore. We've taken it to Origins Game Fair in Columbus, Ohio. And then we'll be taking it to CharCon, Charleston, West Virginia. And then I believe we're talking about what that looks like or feels like for PAX Unplugged. Are we getting a booth? Are we actually trying to get signups? Or are we kickstarting? We're still very much in the getting the actual manufacturer quotes and shipping. And really, we're just shopping around to see what's the best prices that we can get and what's the best choices to make, because it's the first time we've done it. But I would say we now know the ballpark. We have numbers that we are starting to get comfortable with and understanding, okay, so this is what we're looking like. Now, financially, it's all the kind of research that we've been doing in addition to taking the game out there and getting people to play it and keep refining it. It's on its version 10 now after 3 years, which also blows my mind. We've always thought it would be cool with Thirst to do like an October Kickstarter.
Well, I thought it might be fun now that this is going to be sort of a capstone on what I think has been like a super useful season of guests. And I thought it would be
agree.
fun to kind of like reflect on some of the advice that we heard. And we had several folks, like whether it's Megamoth Studios or Jack Malacat or Curvin, who's a very deliberate game designer, and others who kind of like span this gamut of either playtest, refine until it's ready versus make an MVP. There can always be future iterations. Get it funded, get it out there. I'm curious where you find yourself falling.
Yeah, so this is going to be baller crazy and like nuts, but I'm just going to spew it. My goal, legit, is to try to get as many games out a year as possible. And so I know that we have stuff that we're in the works. We don't really talk about it, or we just maybe talked about people in person at conventions or on the podcast, but we do have more in the barrel. I definitely think now that I realize it is within grasp for us. We literally are at the point of just launching the Kickstarter and choosing the final tiers and making a choice, and that's it. There's also 2 or 3 other games that we're also kind of working on too. I don't know why we decided to do like this beefy board game for like our first one out of the box. That was something that everyone warned us against it, but I think now we've got enough advice from people at conventions or on the season that it's like, hey, this is stretch goals. Hey, this is version 2. So how do you get the small thing out there that's really affordable? That's what people want. That's where my mind is at it, to be honest, is to get to the point to where when we retire, I can put more time into this game design business. What's the smart decisions we need to make over 2 or 3 years to be in the best place we can be by that time period? So as you know, we spend X amount of time a week on this. In actual meeting time face to face, we kind of cross our fingers and hope for 3 hours a week. Can we get 3 hours of FaceTime? Lots of times life happens, work happens, and that has to be rescheduled or reduced or asynchronous tag ups and all that shit, right? But then there's an X amount of work. And so in regards to like 2 people who can do a lot of work that they enjoy, and then how do we make it faster? How do we make it better? What that says to me is we're going to be literally situations where we're going to have chunks of time in the future. And I don't know if that's a 6 week or a month or whatever, to where that's just like we do weekly play testing on like one game, like bam, bam, bam. And so I'm thinking like, in regards to like the time that we invest and then how we're becoming more strategic and better utilizing that time. Here's a planned sprint of playtesting. Here's a planned sprint of recording for podcast. Here's a design sprint for like our other card game, or, you know, and that's the way I see it kind of having to just evolve out of necessity.
I mean, the last couple of years of my life has been deeply invested in what I would call organization design and workflow design. And the way we've seen the results of this kind of approach on the podcast, what I think is distilling the creative work from the procedural work to get to a point where we can actually scale our time. And right now, as 2 people, for 3 plus or minus hours per week, there's actually quite a bit happening that I think is really impressive. And the way I kind of look at it is like the continued proceduralization as we figure out the procedures of game development. We can really maximize our creative time. And then I'm really excited for a world where that can start getting delegated. We can actually build like a small team.
I think it's like these partnerships, right? So we now have this great illustrator, Aiden, and he's fantastic. And so then like relationships with game manufacturers, we have this incredible community and network of people that we want to be peers with as game designers. And it's just kind of, okay, you just kind of put in the work. It's like a karate belt or like a tournament or anything in life. It's just like, yeah, you got to do it. And we're like I think I can say it this way, not to be all sports metaphors, but I'm a sports metaphor person. It's like there is a finish line and we now freaking see it. And if you've ever done a 5K or done something like that before and you're like, oh my God, okay, it's possible. All we have to do is just, not quit. So that's kind of the positive energy I'm putting into it. And I also think, like, you're right, we're probably going to have to expand or grow at some point. We'll need people to help with booths at bare minimum. And I've heard this weekend that it's like, hey, when you get 5 or 6 games under your belt, 5 to 7 games, that's when you can quit your full-time job. You know what I mean? That's when you're actually selling games that you're manufacturing yourself or you're partnering through a publisher or manufacturer. I'm just thinking like, dude, we got to get this first one out of the way and get it funded. And I think it's so close. And then after that, I just think it's just sprinting again.
Thirst is a 2 to 4 player vampire versus vampire game of Dominion, in which players become powerful, monstrous, and bloodthirsty vampires. Rise from the graveyard hungry to find that you are not the only creature of darkness in town. Fight other vampires for dominion over neighborhoods and for influence. Hunt, but hunt wisely. The first vampire to accrue an influence score of 10 wins and can finally slake their thirst. Thirst is on Kickstarter. Sign up to get notified of its launch at thirstboardgame.com. Find Thirst and other things we're working on at designthinkinggames.com. I want to use that as maybe a way to dovetail into one of the big aha moments for me is just the idea that there really are kind of like quantitative numbers that imply a certain number of success. For instance, like if you can get 200 like qualified leads before your Kickstarter launches, the likelihood that you'll be able to see that become 800 contributors to a Kickstarter fund, which very likely will get you at least to a $10,000 Kickstarter, is really interesting. And you can kind of reverse engineer and shoot for different metrics like that, which for my style of brain is very useful. If you had to pick like one aha moment over like the 2 or 3 years or so, what do you think that is?
2 moments for me are when I actually saw repeatedly over and over at different conventions around the country that people liked Thirst and they thought, oh my God, there's something here. This is polished. And it's not for everyone. But the way that fans have described it to me, and I hate to say this because it's like, they just said like, oh, it's like Betrayal at House on the Hill, but Munchkin in front of you, but it's all undead. And it's like, okay. And it's like, I can see that. I get it to some degree because people describe mechanics. But that one is that, we saw repeated just play testing that went very positive and people are digging it. Just like they just cool. They were having fun. And that's what I really was a moment. And the second moment is like, dude, this is something that even 2 people working like 6 hours a week, this is something that has to grow if we want to make this the side hustle, full-time business, retirement job, or just.
Well, I mean, we are in this to become professional game publishers that has something sustainable, and it's a very different way to approach the joy and the art of like making a game or making a podcast or making whatever, when you're like, hey, how do I do this so that there is product that's returning on investment in some degree, and how do you make that go up and to the right? And
did you say go up to the right because you're thinking like a single chart, like 4 quadrant chart? Yeah, I got you. It was just, I love it that you referenced it. We actually talked about this 5 years. Remember the first year when we did this in 2020? We said, dude, if we're not doing it for 5 years, we're not doing it,
Dude, you're right.
We're going into our product release like on the kind of the 5th year mark, right? I actually saw something recently. I had never read the Neverending Story. I only saw the movie. When you got kicked out of Fantasia, when the nothing would come to people, they would get mesmerized for it, and they would just walk into it willingly, and then it would spit them out on Earth, and they would have like no fantasy. And so it was like crazy. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with that.
Like, I know exactly what you're talking about. The whole lesson of the book that wasn't part of the movie was that people on Earth want so bad. They're almost like programmed to tell you that what you're imagining isn't real, that all of this stuff isn't real. It's not real. It's your imagination. This is what reality is. The people who have been here long enough are constantly inspired to remind you about how little magic there is. And I think and maybe like what like yours and my takeaway, to turn this back into a navel gazing love fest, is that we are constantly philosophically going like, fuck this noise. Like, let's dream a little.
I want to go to Neverland. Fuck it. It's just, I don't figure out what makes you shine and then find out how to shine.
If you've stumbled onto the station, welcome back. Your host, Mr. Graves, returns with a brand new collection of terrifying tales designed to chill you to the bone.
Make the biggest discovery this world has ever seen.
Help! What is happening to me?
We also have an assortment of characters that are just dying to meet you.
It took him to hell.
Can you understand us better now?
You may need to leave the light on for this one. Your Horror Show, Season 2, premiering on all podcast platforms May 14th. Listen, if you dare.
Anyways, I don't know how I look back to that. Did you want to talk about anything else, or is this, I mean, there's the kind of...
No, this is going to be an episode of amazing like segues, because speaking of like putting our feet on the necks of the proles and rubbing out their shine, the only thing I've really been tuned into lately has been the amount of hate that Hellblade 2 Senua's Saga has been getting on the internet by YouTube bros who
I
don't
haven't
understand
seen
how
any of this at all.
amazing.
haven't seen any of this. Please give me like the very Cliff Notes version of what's going on, because I've missed all of that.
Yeah, so the TLDR is that like some years ago, like I had mentioned that Hellblade 1 Senua's Sacrifice is probably not just my game of the year at the time, which it was, but also one of my games of like the decade. And it is basically the story of a Gallic or Celt woman. Her village is raided by Vikings, and she has a kind of psychosis that at that time is interpreted as witchcraft or being touched. And she goes on this journey to save the spirit of her loved one from literal
Yes.
hell. This is the sequel. It's a continuation of this story, where the design mechanic that really set it apart in the first one was that there was no HUD. In fact, what you had to rely on was the audio spatial voice, like voices in your head. Someone attacks you from the back.
Haven't
There's no
experienced it
warning.
yet. Yeah.
Is that they say like watch out, and you either get hit or you don't. As you learn the game, they start chastising you, like you do something wrong. It's like, she's not the one, she's not the chosen one. How could she ever think she could do this on her own? But then finally you successfully block, and the other voices in your head are like, yes, don't listen to them, right? And this is how it
Yes.
trains you.
It's cool.
So the sequel came out from Ninja Theory,
this year.
which just in the last couple of months. And Ninja Theory in the time since had been acquired as one of Microsoft's studios. And so now it's a Microsoft studio, Ninja Theory, producing Hellblade 2. And it continues her story. And it's very much the same. The big thing that they did was focus more on the narrative and the storytelling, and they took out a lot of the chore, right? So if you think of like what makes a game, it's like, well, going over here and looking in the basket, or going over here and solving the puzzle. They really kind of streamlined everything, so it's like a psychosis walking simulator.
Yeah, I've only heard positive things ever about it.
So people are saying the negative is that Hellblade 2 is not fun. It is too hard. It runs the gamut to the point where it's become a meme of YouTubers, like YouTube game reviewers, hating on this game. There's, of course, a niche on the subreddit or whatever. People are defending it or whatever. But I played this game as a fan of the original, as someone who I feel is aware of the choices designers make in creating systems of gaming, and the art style and stuff. And I found it like moving and like a wonderful experience, and also easier than the first one. Anyway, I just wanted to take the time to
I'm glad
flex
you
on this
did.
game. It didn't get a lot of love. I did not see it get a lot of marketing, and I think Microsoft is having a really bad time at the moment.
On Switch, I just got this Panzer Paladin, Legend of Zelda, like meets Mega Man, and it's just like, what the fuck? And so I was just like, I got to give this a try. And so I'm also playing Octopath Traveler 2, which is really good. And then I'm playing the shit out of Star Wars Hunters, which is a free battle online shooter game. And so it is only on Android, iOS, and Switch. And so, but you can get it for free, and it is amazing. It is just like, I love being J3DI, who is the robot who was programmed to think he was a Jedi. And so he goes around with a lightsaber, like talking like a Jedi. And then I'm still playing through Final Fantasy Rebirth on PlayStation. It's just, I'm doing it all, 100%ing it. I'm unlocking everything, doing every quest, and so it's just slowly me grinding through it. But it's amazing. It's beautiful. Final Fantasy VI was always a game where it was just like fun mini games with like a sad and cool love story. It's like really great writing, right? But it was just mini games and completionist quests, and so it's just taking me back there again to where it's just like, oh, the fun of playing it. And so I'm just playing a lot of fun games right
Totally.
now, and they're eating up time. I always play Dead by Daylight, and they just announced this year has been like the hottest year for fucking DBD. It's like their 6-year anniversary. So a game that's on its original base code, or that they're not going to make a 2 or a 3. And they just announced a partnership with Castlevania. They just got a partnership with Lara Croft.
Ooh,
Lara Croft is the new Survivor who comes out this month. And they
sweet.
just got the fucking Dungeons and Dragons crossover with Vecna, and he's in it. It's just like they're killing it right now. It is the reason why it's still like one of the top stream games, right? So yeah, that's all what I'm playing. And then on top of that, I'm trying to play new board games every week and try to fit them in and play them. When I was at Origins, this game, which has been out for 25, 30 years, this board game, was nominated into the Hall of Fame of board games. And I bought it. And it's from Ravensburger, who made the puzzles during the pandemic and swore, like, dude, we will keep the puzzles coming, and we will make sure that we have mass dock workers who are okay to get you stuff. And they were a cool company. And the couple who designed this was a husband and wife, and they were there and they accepted an award at Origins. And so I ordered it, and I'm going to freaking play it. So it's called Labyrinth. Ravensburger.
Well, we've been talking tangentially about lots of things and also about nothing at the exact same time. Perhaps we bring this to a close by reminding people, or maybe just relaunching.
Yes.
We would really love you to sign up for free, just to say that you're following, show that you're interested, sing to the algorithmic gods at thirstboardgame.com. It's just a Kickstarter sign up page. You put in your email or you log into your Kickstarter and you just click follow. You don't have to do anything else. And that's the best way to stay on top of the game. From everything we've heard, people dig this game. If you like vampires and you love drinking blood, or at least thinking about it, then this is a board game for you.
I think when we target our advertising on Instagram, it always is like, what are you targeting? And I'm like, Monster Squad, Dracula. And I'm just like, Vampire the Masquerade. I'm just like, Lost Boys. I'm just like, if any of these ring to you,
Yeah, it's like,
Ravenloft.
are you over the age of 18 and you have personal income enough to buy board games, and you also love like goth women and goth men, and you like to pretend you're a vampire, and you watch Interview with the Vampire and you want to be the vampire? Thirstboardgame.com. It's like,
There you go.
I don't know, like,
No, I think we can do something with that there.
and with like, give me one more random, totally off the wall take on like, give me a thirstboardgame.com CTA.
If you know Michael or I, if you listen to the podcast, or if you follow us on social media, please go to thirstboardgame.com, sign up for our Kickstarter pre-launch, and then that helps us know when we can launch and get the game to you.
Your donation of just $1 feeds a family of 4.
I'm sorry. Maybe that was the energy for you that time. So, are you wanting to take it?
No, it's fine. I was like, I'm going to just be like, in the arms of the angels.
But you should definitely use this as a note to like put sad, slow violin Sarah McLachlan music behind this.
This season, we really promise Design Thinking Games is going to be more active on various social media. We understand as aged Gen Xers / millennials, elder millennials, that like,
Wait. I'm firmly rooted in Zennial. I am a Zennial, so I am right between Gen X and Millennial.
Okay, as a Zennial and a Millennial elder, we are we acknowledge that. Look, like our social media game for the last 2 seasons hasn't been on point, but this season you're missing out if you're not following Design Thinking Games on the 3 T's: TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. Probably in that order, as Twitter is a dumpster fire. Well, on TikTok, you can actually see Ben shooting some like excellent, like just like footage of some like of the really cool and interesting games we're playing. As you know, we look at games clinically and deconstruct them to the point of no longer being enjoyable, but that makes for some really good footage. The other thing you'll find there are like this kind of like network of amazing indie designers who we are interviewing, some of whom, or we're interviewing on this show for the season, and we're all going to be engaging there. We'd love for it. If you are into user experience, if you're into the player experience, if you're into the craft of game design, if you're into us, Design Thinking Games.
Thank you for listening and connecting with Design Thinking Games on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. You can also check out designthinkinggames.com to request topics, ask questions, or see what else is going on. Until next time, game on. Any final thoughts for our listeners, Rapid Protobot?
Destroy. Destroy.